What is up, Tecumseh, you 18-level upgrade from a municipality that is just okay? Welcome to the Tecumseh Bicentennial Podcast. My name is Benjamin J Nichols, but you can call me Bibin Jibin Mibin Nibik Heibels. Today's guest is Jack Baker, Mayor of Tecumseh, who, I gotta tell you, has a voice that's built for radio. In fact, I think I mentioned that during the podcast. Maybe even have a conversation with Amy Sloop about it. You know, I'm not sure. But it's going to be a really good interview, and it has so many cool things about Tecumseh and the history of Tecumseh that I'm really not going to add very much. So let's just get straight to the interview.
I am Jack Baker, and I'm the mayor of the city of Tecumseh.
All right, Jack Baker, mayor of Tecumseh. What is something that is not a secret about you, but most people don't know?
That was a question that I had a lot of answers to, but I think the one that probably sticks out most with me is the fact that I've worked downtown on the Chicago Boulevard for 56 years in one capacity or another, and something I'm very, very proud of, so I know the downtown really well. I think that people know that I've worked down there, but I don't think they realize I've worked downtown since 1968.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So in 1968?
Yes.
What did you do?
I was in high school,
okay,
and I worked for a man by the name of Harold Easton, and he had what was known as Easton's Friendly Service. It was a full-service station right on the corner of Pearl and Chicago Boulevard.
So you came out and you filled the gas?
Yes.
Washed the windows?
Absolutely.
All right. Washed the mirrors?
Did. And actually, we washed all the windows, and we checked the oil, and we checked the air in the tires.
Excellent.
And that's the way it was done in 1968.
And that's the way it should be done.
Yes. Yes.
I like it. Jack, what hobbies do you have?
You know, I don't have many, but the one that I do have, and I'm not into it as much as I used to, but I intend to get back into it, is I enjoy hiking. And I enjoy hiking a lot. My specific area, my favorite area to hike, is the Appalachian Trail. And I've done literally hundreds of miles of the Appalachian Trail. My goal eventually is to through hike the Appalachian Trail, which would start out at Springer Mountain, Georgia, and you end up at Mount Katahdin in Maine. A little over 2,100 miles. Will I be able to do it? I think I will. But I better do it soon because I'm not getting any younger. But I have hiked the 72-mile stretch through the Smoky Mountains is one of my favorite sections of the Appalachian Trail. If you hike south to north, you start out at Fontana Dam, and you end up at Davenport Gap, where the AT leaves the Smoky Mountains. So that was 72 miles. They're pretty rugged.
The Smoky Mountains are beautiful.
They are. They absolutely are. And I've hiked out in Colorado. I've hiked out west and out east also. But boy, yeah, Smoky Mountains are, and specifically the Appalachian Trail through the Smoky Mountains is probably my favorite.
This is going, off script, but I just have to ask because you've spent all that time on the Appalachian Trail, out in the wilderness. Have you encountered Bigfoot?
Have not encountered Bigfoot, but I've encountered black bears and wild boars. So
which one's worse?
Wild boars. In a minute.
Yeah.
Wild boars. Yes, sir. Okay. With black bear, if you use your head and you're calm, you would normally avoid an incident. With wild boars, you better get out of there now. So I now have experienced both.
Have you had to fight a wild boar?
I have not.
Oh.
And I don't want to.
I realize that sounded disappointing. It's like the fodder for stories.
And the thing about wild boars is they do not travel alone. They travel in packs. And I'm not sure if that's the proper word, pack, group, whatever. Yep. Many, several together. So it isn't just one.
Yeah, that would be intimidating.
It is intimidating. Yes.
They are. They're a bit aggressive.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. I like it. I'm going to interrupt with a fact that I looked up real quick. A group of wild boar is called a sounder, according to nationalgeographic.com. A sounder, S-O-U-N-D-E-R. And I figure, National Geographic probably knows a little bit more about animals than I do. So I'm just going to go with it. Sounder. And now we all know something new. Anyway. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
That's another question that different things went through my mind. I guess the one that I think of the most, and especially in light of today's political climate, is the ability to make people get along, regardless of what side they're on. There's no reason why we cannot get along. I wish I had that ability to make that happen. And I don't, but I kind of do. If I could just change this world, that would be it. That would be the thing I would change. Make it peaceful, make people get along.
I like it.
I like it too.
It's good.
I do.
Which superpower did you get stuck with?
And here again, kind of following that line that I just talked about, I think I am a good peacemaker. And I think if you look at my inner circle or my friends or my associates, that I have cultivated an atmosphere where we do get along. And not everyone that are my friends or in my circle view things the same way as I do, and nor do I view it the same way that they do. However, we get along. And I think that's so important.
There is room for disagreement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
I agree. Tell me a story that you plan on telling your grandkids.
Yeah, so you would think a man my age would have some grandchildren. I don't.
Okay.
I don't have any. Both of my boys have never had children, so will they? Possibly. But, just because I don't have any doesn't mean I don't have an answer for that question. And I think the thing that I would really dwell on is what it was like growing up in Tecumseh in the 1950s and 60s, which I had the privilege of doing, and how much different life was then than it is today. That would be what I would focus on. Back when I was your age, this is how we did things. I mean, that's kind of what that sounds like, right?
Yeah, I love it.
But that's what I would focus on is, the way life was in Tecumseh,
Sure.
50,
so give me one. So here I am. I'm walking down the street. You encounter me back when I was your age.
Yeah, back when I was your age, we were more open. We saw someone, we met someone on the street. We quite often shook their hand. And if not shook their hand, at least said good morning or good afternoon, sir or ma'am. And it was a lot more proper then, a lot more respectful. Not disagreeing with the way things are done today, but I'm just saying it was more proper, more respectful, more welcoming than what I witnessed today.
Sure. Who taught you how to shake hands?
Well, my father did.
Okay.
Yes, he did. I do recall him, actually showing me how to grip a man's hand perfectly, and also how to shake hands with a woman, which I think a lot of people could learn a lesson with also. Do I do the fist bumps? Sure, absolutely. Sure we do. I was worried, actually, and I say worried, that may be too strong of a word, but I was concerned, once we had COVID, that shaking a man's hand was over. This is the new norm, fist bumps. And I welcome either one. Either one, yeah.
Fair enough. Jack, what inspires you personally?
That was an easy question. I'm an early riser, and I go to bed late. And one of the reasons for that is I love watching the sun rise. Absolutely love it. There's nothing like it. And on the other side of the coin, I love watching the sun set. Some of your best views, some of your best color in the sky is at those times. And when you look at that sun coming up, it's usually pretty calm. Things are quiet. And it just gives you a chance to think about, here's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to make this the best day yet. And that's what I enjoy doing, is watching the sunrise and the sunset. My oldest son, I have two children, two boys. One lives in Florida and one in Arizona. And more specifically, the one that lives in Florida lives in Miami Beach, and he lives right on the beach. He has a beautiful condominium right on the beach. And I will tell you this, there is nothing like watching the sun come up over the ocean. It is special. And the water glistens from that sun. I've had the privilege of doing that just recently. We were down there back in April, and we made sure and got up early to go out on the beach and watch the sun come up over Miami Beach.
I got to tell you, Jack, you have a voice for radio. It's a good voice.
Well, you're very kind.
I got to tell you, the mayor, Jack Baker, his voice is built for radio.
I am such a I have huge adoration for Jack Baker. Mm-hmm. I feel like he's Santa Claus and Jimmy Stewart, like all good things. I feel like he's just combined all of those things, and his temperament. I mean, whenever I attend a council meeting, just to see him in that setting, oh my goodness, there's just always everything I would love to be told no by him. Like, his no is fantastic. Like, you feel so loved and you feel so cared for.
Seen and heard.
Yes, you've been valued. I have to say no to you, but I've appreciated everything about how you've brought this and how you expressed yourself. I wish my answer could be different, but it's no. I'm like, just say no to me all day long, Jack Baker. That's all I need.
You could just retire and become the no guy and have people pay you on Patreon to turn people down on their behalf.
He is magical.
That you passionately care about.
And that's an easy one to answer. What I care about is the well-being of the residents of the city of Tecumseh. Make no mistake, I think of that every day. I've been involved with the city for more years than I probably have deserved, but I've come to grow and love this city, and I've come to grow and love the residents of this city, and I want them to be able to experience the things in life that I have. And I feel very blessed. Now, I feel I've also earned what I have through hard work and a little luck along the way. But that's what I want. I want the residents of this city to enjoy the life that I have. And if that happens, man, that's great. That is great.
The very first thing that comes to your mind when I say, what is your favorite memory in or involving Tecumseh?
And this is going to be an answer that you may not expect. And on the other hand, you might. And I think it's a very timely answer, the Sesquicentennial, which is a 150 years celebration. We did that in 1974. And I was a big part of that. And I never dreamed that 50 years later, I'd be a big part of their bicentennial. I will go as far as to say this mustache that you see, Ben, was grown in 1974. And the reason it was back then, men were encouraged to grow facial hair for the Sesquicentennial. And if you didn't, you were requested to go down to our local police department and buy a pass so that you didn't get a fine for not having facial hair. Yeah, true story. That's true story. Yeah, isn't that crazy?
That's amazing.
Yeah, true story.
Can we do that again?
So that's well, no, and I'll tell you why. So I'm probably adding a little more here than I should or need to, but you get me going, and I kind of. Now I will say that this mustache was a different shade of color 50 years ago than it is today. But that's how I developed this, was for that. And so for our bicentennial, we've been working on this for approximately 2 years. Now by that I mean at the time there was Dan Swallow, our city manager, Gary Nagle, fellow councilman, close friend of mine, myself. We started meeting monthly a little over 2 years ago, and we were throwing things out. We had our programs from 1974 and just throwing ideas out. And I said, what about requesting that men grow facial hair? Well, that picked up no traction. So that was the end of it. So, what worked in 74 was not popular in 2024. We got rid of that one real quick.
I love that, though. That's fantastic. Finish this sentence. We kind of did this, but we're going to go ahead and do it again, and maybe we have something different. Finish this sentence. I remember when.
Yeah, okay. So I remember when Michigan Highway M-52 ran through the city of Tecumseh. Okay. So you're wondering, how did that happen?
That's exactly what I'm wondering.
I knew that. So if you were coming up out of Adrian on M-52, when you came to Billington's Corners, what we call Billington's Corners, which is the intersection of Highway 50 and Highway 52. 52 ended at 50. It ended right there. So if you wanted to continue on 52 towards Manchester and towards Chelsea, you turned right on 50. And you brought that into the city of Tecumseh until you came to Evans Street. At that point, M-52 went left on Evans Street. And it continued on all the way out into the village of Clinton at US 12. You would turn left on 12, head back west, and you'd pick 52 up to go north. The section of Highway 52 between M50 and US 12 was the last section of Highway 52's construction. And if you look at our calendar, the city calendar for this year, and if you go back to the month of April, so last month, there's a picture of one of the churches on North Evans Street across from the baseball field. Now, the church looks a little different today than it did then. Actually, it's a newer constructed church than it was back then. But in that picture, if you look closely, in that front yard of that church, you will see a sign that says M-52. And I remember that. Now, I was quite young, but I remember that well. So when you got to Billington's Corners, you turned right, and so 50 and 52 were the same highway until you got to Evans Street. Go north, and there you go. And that's one of the reasons there were so many service stations on North Evans, because there were several. I mean, one right after another, after another, after another, after another. And that was one of the reasons, because it was a state highway. And makes so people that were coming out of Adrian that wanted to go to Chelsea, they had to come through Tecumseh.
Brilliant. So Tecumseh was probably sad that leg of 52 got completed, because that's going to lower some traffic.
Yeah, well, maybe. I was really not.
Yeah, probably not very cognizant of that.
Exactly. I was not. You're correct. Yeah. But yeah, that's something that I think that
I like
is kind of interesting.
It is interesting.
And here again, to prove my point, just go back and look at the city of Tecumseh's calendar. Month of April, you'll see the M-52 sign in the front yard of the church on North Evans. Yes, sir.
All right. So that's probably St. Pete's.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Which is that sandstone? Limestone. Limestone.
Yes. Indiana limestone.
Indiana limestone.
Yes, sir.
I've heard a lot about the Indiana limestone.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, when you see a building with Indiana limestone, you know who built it.
Yep.
And actually, the building that we're sitting in is one of them.
It is, exactly, yep.
So, born in 1890, Ray Herrick was in charge of production for Ford in the earliest days of the automotive industry in Detroit.
In 1930, Herrick left Ford Motor Company to start a small automotive parts manufacturing operation. Now, 4 years later, fearing a dependency on the volatile auto industry, Herrick turned his attention to the new field of refrigeration. Over the ensuing decades, Herrick built the world's largest manufacturer of refrigeration compressors. In the process, he achieved almost 2 decades of excellent financial performance. That manufacturer became an early Fortune 500 company called Tecumseh Products and was the biggest employer here in Tecumseh and in the surrounding area. Now, Herrick himself was of a philanthropic nature, and he formed the Herrick Foundation, whose long-term mission was to improve the welfare of society. The Indiana limestone that Jack referenced is a common site in and around Tecumseh, and is actually there because Herrick built so many of the buildings in Tecumseh and insisted that they use Indiana limestone to build them. The building that this interview took place in, which I'll get back to in a moment, as well as so many of the buildings, were built thank you to the generosity of Ray Herrick and the Herrick Foundation. This is the significance of Jack's remark, that if you see a building made of Indiana limestone, you know who built it. Now, back to the building that Jack is referring to specifically. This is the home of Covenant Church right here in Tecumseh. It's located at 5290 Milwaukee Road. Now, if that's not helpful, it's also across from the Tecumseh Golf Club. And if that still isn't helpful, it's located on Birch Street at the place where it goes from 35 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. Now, I mention this specifically because the story of Covenant taking up residence in this building is also remarkable. Founded in July of 2012, Covenant Church started when a group of devoted Christians decided to create a new church. For 6 years, we rented out St. Peter's Episcopal Church building, where the current Temple Fitness is located, on North Evans Street. Our faith and commitment to service flourished, and by 2017, the congregation had outgrown our rented space, prompting us to seek new opportunities. Little did we know, a blessing was on the horizon. In a divine turn of events, the congregation of First Baptist Church in Tecumseh offered a gift of their building and grounds to Covenant Church, providing us with a new permanent home. This generous act has been a testament to the power and faith. This generous act has been a testament to the power of faith and God's providence. I say things like we and our because I am the director of worship arts for Covenant Church, and I have been serving this congregation since before our beginning. Many of these interviews are taking place in my office studio here at the church. Okay, back to the interview.
I have a little history with this church, and I remember when it was built.
Okay.
And I remember I was working for a man, Harold Easton, and he had a fuel bulk plant, and they put in an underground fuel oil tank on the west side of this church, and I remember filling it. And I remember being told to get out there and fill it as soon as you can because the heavy rains are coming, and they didn't want that tank to pop out of the ground from all the heavy rain. So I was the first one to fill the fuel oil tank, and I don't know if they still heat with fuel oil or if they've gone to natural gas. And that would have been about 1972. I could be off by a year or two, but not by many.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I have a little history with this church. I have performed Masonic services in this church for members of the church that were here, and I've never been a member of this church, but I have a lot of history with this church, and I've been to a lot of functions and performed ceremonies and filled the fuel oil tanks.
That is extremely cool. I like that. Do you have any memories involving a Tecumseh business you can share?
Well, I will say my first job, which was the business that my brother and I eventually bought, and we have since sold. We sold it back in 2015. And I worked for this gentleman's name, who I've mentioned a couple of times so far, and that was Harold Easton. And I started work for him in 1968. Once again, that was on the corner of Pearl and the Boulevard, and now it's a green space, which I think is wonderful. It's what I wanted it to be. And, of course, we have that beautiful mural on the building that stands next to it. But I was a teenager, and back then, service was something that was very important. Not that it isn't today, but service was the driving force then. And I learned a lot about how to treat people, how to respect people, and how to take things personal when sometimes you might receive some criticism. So that's really was kind of my foundation, if you will, for my life, to be quite honest with you. And I've worked with people, and I continue to, for, 54 years, 56 years, yeah. Wow, yeah. So isn't that amazing?
It is.
It is.
That's pretty incredible. So tell me about Harold Easton. Who was he?
Yeah, well, Harold, he was a mayor of the city of Tecumseh also for several years, and he was my employer for many years. He was a mentor of mine. Him and Cal Zorn, who was our city manager, were close friends. Cal Zorn is who the Cal Zorn Park is named after. And I had the privilege of learning about city government just in observing, at that time, the mayor and the city manager. And it really got my interest into local government. And if there was any two individuals that really started me down this path that I've been on for 34 years now, was Harold Easton and former city manager Cal Zorn.
So how did that come about? You worked for Harold Easton.
Yes.
Cal Zorn also? How did that connection come about?
Yeah, Cal would stop by the station just about every day. And, just to fill Harold in on what was going on, and Harold would fill him in, and obviously I would hear part of their conversation.
So you're just a fly on the wall.
Yeah. I mean, I would hear some of their conversations, and they would ask me as a teenager, what are you thinking? And I would engage in conversations with those two men, and boy, they really got me headed in the right path. There's no question.
I like that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Do you have any memories involving you Tecumseh Park? And you can't use Cal Zorn now because you already dropped his name.
I'm not going to. No. I'm going to use two parks, one that most people are familiar with and one that maybe they aren't familiar with, but the occasion was for the same. In the state of Michigan, mayors are allowed to perform marriages. Now, it used to be you could only perform a marriage within your city. Years ago, it was expanded to where you can perform marriages within your county, and I have performed many marriages down through the years, not only in the city, but in the county also. But that being said, two of the favorite places to perform those are Adams Park and Holtram Park. Holtram Park because of the gazebo, and it's not used a lot, but it's a nice park. It was funded by the Rotary Club, and the city does a wonderful job of maintaining that. And so my connection with Holtram Park was performing marriages. Adams Park, which is right next to City Hall, is the same thing. Matter of fact, I just recently performed a marriage there. While we don't have the gazebo, we do have the nice overhead shelter area, and that's where I performed it. So my favorite memories of those two parks are having the privilege of performing marriages. Pretty cool. Nothing like an outdoor marriage. I will say this, and I performed a marriage last year up on one of the lakes, and I actually thought it was in Jackson County when the lady gave me the address. She assured me it was in Lenawee County, but being me, a worrywart, I drove up there just to make sure. And it is in Lenawee County, but I can't remember the name of the lake now. But that was one that was outdoors, and it was pretty special. I've done several inside City Hall, inside the council chambers. I've done several in people's homes, but there's nothing like an outdoor wedding. Nothing like it. It's pretty cool. I have a service that I share with the bride and groom before I perform it to make sure they're agreeable with it, to make sure. Because I do put religion in there too, and the belief in God and those type of things, which I think is important. And I don't want to offend someone who they don't want to go down that road. And I've never had anyone said no. Now, it isn't a big part of it, but it is part of it. And so I've refined it down through the years, and I have a set service that I use, and it's a very short and simple service, but it's a very effective service, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Short and simple. Every wedding guest on the planet thanks you for that. All right, memories involving a Tecumseh school.
This is one that I'm sure some of the listeners are aware of, but I'm sure several aren't. I attended West Branch School, and West Branch was an elementary school in the Tecumseh public school system. And it's located on the corner of Kilbuck and Maiden Lane Street. More specifically, it would be the northwest corner of those streets. And the building still stands, and it's a residence now, and it takes up approximately a quarter of a block. So I attended that school back around 1960, 61. That is probably what I remember the most about the schools that I attended. I attended all Tecumseh public schools, graduated from Tecumseh High School. But West Branch School was the one that I think of often. And when I mention that to people, they'll say, never heard of it. Or if you're my age, they'll say, I went there too.
That's not very big. There couldn't have been a lot of kids there.
No, there weren't. No, just one class.
Just one class?
One class, yeah. Probably 35 kids at the most, yeah.
Whew, come a long way, eh?
Yeah.
What hopes do you have for the future of Tecumseh?
Yeah. I hope that we will continue as we have for the past 200 years, and certainly I can't validate the last 200, but I can validate 72 of those 200 years. I hope that we're a community that that others envy and respect. When I say envy, I don't mean in a negative way. I hope that when I say that other communities will look and say, man, I wish we could be like them. Certainly, I think we have a lot of respect at this time. I know we do from other communities, and I want to see that continue.
What advice or message do you have for the people of Tecumseh 100 years from now while they're celebrating their tricentennial?
Yeah. Appreciate what they have. Appreciate the people that came before you, as I appreciate the people that came before me. And do the things that are proper and correct to allow the city to thrive for 200 more years. That's my message. Yes.